later. Then I like getting on here. I was talking with I'm still 2 years after my father's death. We're still closing out accounts, getting things switched over. Um, as my brother and I are continuing to live in the house, it's paid for. It's left in our name. Um, all we got to do is, the incidentals, utilities, cable stuff, um, maintenance, and freaking buttload of taxes. I live in a very high tax area. I'm not opposed to paying taxes, as I know, especially in my community, which has some of the best schools in the country, um, as well as endless bike paths, a very green, wooded area, um, great libraries, great roads, street lights. It's all paid for by my taxes. Well, absolutely fine. They just don't need so many of them. They don't need so many of my taxes, from the HMOs to the city tax to the county tax to the state taxes. It seems to me everything could be taken care of: state taxes, federal taxes. That's just me. Also, the fact that the house is paid for, you shouldn't be taxed for your property any longer. Just my opinion, for what it counts, which isn't much according to the government and the IRS. Let's get down to more serious business here, that we're going to continue talking about the mystics. So I'm going to try to keep this conversation to 20 minutes, half an hour tops, because we had a pretty good response from you guys, my friends, talking about this, talking about the mystics, the great mystics. I talked almost exclusively about the Christian mystics yesterday. Going forward will be a little more all-inclusive, but there's such a rich tradition of the Christian mystics that it's almost impossible not to focus so heavily on them. And it's so beautifully worded as well, referring back to Meister Eckhart and his wonderful line of, "The eye in which I see God is the same eye in which God sees me." Absolutely beautiful. Of course, I did read Rumi's The Guest House yesterday, and I think we'll read some more Rumi. I got my Google up. We're going to do some serious Googling here. And I'll try not to get too sidetracked. Here's what we're going to start with. If I can find it. And I might read from my book. This is one of my all-time favorite from Rumi. And every time I read Rumi, I say, this is one of my all-time favorite from Rumi, because it's so beautiful. Everything I read instantly becomes my all-time favorite until I read something again. I'd like to find the whole quote here. I only got part of it up. Again, I was saying that I might read I might read from my book. Let's see. I am not being the most entertaining host for you guys when I do this, so my apologies. I thought it would be easier to get this up because it's a beautiful stanza from Rumi. So I'd like to find the whole thing. but I'm having very little luck. Sorry. We're going to give one more shot, and then I will let the whole thing go if it doesn't work. This is the part of it, and it's beautiful. So that alone, I'll add on the beginning as I originally read after. Oh, sorry, I'll add on the ending that I had originally read. Here it goes. This is from Rumi, and it is in regards to mystics. And it sums it up perfectly. Here we go. I, you, he, she, we. In the garden of mystic lovers, these are not true distinctions. Now, originally, the translation I like, it went, I, you, he, she, we. These are not distinctions made in the garden of the mystics. You let me know which one you like better. Both are absolutely beautiful, whatever translation. I believe the last one that I quoted was Coleman Barks, who was probably the world's premier Rumi translator, if not all the way across from every Sufi poet, Rumi, Hafiz, and others. So, there are others that we can read, and that's the whole point of having Google here. Is that we can bring them right up, and we can read them. Kabir, K-I-B-I-R. What I love about the Sufi poets and the Vedic Hindu poets, and even some of the Far Eastern, the Zen poets, one, the simplicity of the language, and two, that it's a universal language, and how they refer to God as the beloved, as the beloved. I'm bringing some of his stuff up. It's a little longer. This sums up mystical thinking right here from Kabir. Are you looking for me? I am in the next seat. My shoulder is against yours. You will not find me in the stupas, not in the Indian shrine rooms, nor in synagogues, nor in cathedrals, not in masses, nor kirtans, not in legs winding around your own neck, nor in eating nothing but vegetables. When you really look for me, you will see me instantly. You will find me in the tiniest house of time. Kabir says, students tell me what is God. He is the breath inside the breath. Now, how is that for just sheer beauty. Where is God? What is God? He is the breath inside the breath. We could call that prana, energy, the life essence. That is the sound you hear when you're meditating and the breath gets quieter and quieter and quieter. You hear the breath inside the breath. Our friend, it is what it is what it is here. Lewis, hey, good morning to you. We're talking about mystics from all traditions. I talked quite a bit yesterday of Christian mystics and my deep love from an early age of the Christian mystics. Although it wasn't much talked about in my Catholic school that I went to from first grade all the way to my first year in high school, when I had the good fortune of being asked to leave my Catholic high school. I had the good fortune of being asked not so kindly to leave my Catholic high school. Not for any great disciplinary reasons, but that I was a lost student. I had my head in the clouds. I paid little attention to anything other than looking outside the window. And sometimes I would have enough of class. My school was in Baltimore City, and I would leave. No excuses, and I would just wander. When I went to school, started high school again in Pennsylvania, and the same thing, except there I was surrounded by endless woods, forest, as well as very large family. And I would leave school and I would hitchhike all over northern Pennsylvania. Cousins would pick me up in the next county and bring me back. I could not stand being in school. I loved being outside. I loved wandering. It was safer back in the day to hitchhike and wander like that. Burpee's yoga uncle is in the house. Welcome, guys. I appreciate it. One of the other things that I love about, as you've read in both Kabir, as I've read in both Kabir and in the Rumi quote, they are often referring to gardens, which I absolutely love, likening the state of our existence, the state of God, to a garden. And you cannot go wrong with quoting that. Let's continue on to Meister Eckhart, who is probably the most recognized, one of the most recognized Christian mystics of, I believe, the 12th century, and I quoted him earlier. Here is one of my favorites that I repeat often, and I remember it every morning, pretty much every morning. This is from Meister Eckhart. If the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. What an absolutely amazing prayer. What an absolutely amazing way to start your day. If you start your day with thank you, you don't know what the day is going to bring you, other than you have been granted your existence. You've been granted that breath. You've been granted the thought of this is another new day. You've been granted the sunrise. You have been granted everything that surrounds you through nothing but grace. You could literally say all of this is unearned, that our existence is unearned. What did we do to get this existence. And the mystic would say, such is God's love. Such is God's love that you were granted the grace of your existence. The abundance of breath, the abundance of air in which to draw from. If the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. Because you are confirming all of this. We're going to continue with Meister Eckhart. This is a quote I mentioned earlier. The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. My eye and God's eye are one eye, one seeing, one knowing, one love. One love, one seeing. That is important to remember. If you guys have heard me talk about the British mystic, modern mystic, Douglas Harding, and the pointing in this direction and living from here. Let's see. Burpees Yoga Uncle says, give gratitude every day is a blessing. I agree 100%. And it's so taken for granted. We forget to do that. We forget that when we're doing our burpees, you did your marathon set, 2 hours plus. The grace that has been given for you to continue to move that way. What a blessing. Hybrid Jim is here. Hey, I'm going to guess that today is not lasagna day. It's just my guess. We're going to continue with Meister Eckhart. Unc says exactly. And you demonstrate it so well, Unc. You demonstrate the movement and the joy of that movement and what a gift it is. It's always such a deep, deep pleasure to see that. Hybrid Jim says his wife is away a few days, so won't bother with big meals. Understandable. Here's something else from Meister Eckhart. Be willing to be a beginning every single morning. Because you know what? We're often not willing. We carry that baggage over from one day to the next. Be willing to be a beginning every single morning. Because it is. It's literally rebirth. We could literally refer to it as a bardo in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, that we are in a new existence every single morning. We have been reborn, reawakened. Literally every single moment morphs into the next. As my friend Robert Saltzman, he wrote the 10,000 Things and Depending on No Thing, likes to say, it's a once upon. What's happening right now, this mixture of atoms and particles dancing within the emptiness of the infinite, is never going to be this particular dance again. Ever. Unique. Every single moment. We're reborn into this uniqueness. A beginning every single morning. How is that for showing up on your burpee mat? How is that for showing up under the gymnastics ring tree? That you're a beginner all over again, which is an important aspect in Zen, beginner's mind. An important aspect in training, to have that curiosity. If I'm one to talk, because I do burpees every single day, but imagine if barefoot burpees was stuck being barefoot burpees, and we'd have no hybrid gym. We'd have no tree that I can only imagine waits for him to show up, extending that particular branch just for him to do what he loves to do. Working hard, it aches. There's some suffering involved, but it is pure joy of being able to do what we do. You show up under that tree, you are willing to be a beginner every single morning, every single evening that you do it. Hybrid Jim says that it's ring tree today. Hybrid Jim says the tree is always thanked after Namaste, which is important because the tree is lending itself to you. And it doesn't surprise me in the least that you recognize that and that you extend that to the tree. And it also doesn't surprise me in the least that the tree is extending that right back, that it is reaching in that direction just for you now, with expectations. Everything in the universe has that expectation of this will be there, whatever this is. Continuing with Meister Eckhart, and suddenly you know it's time to start something new and trust the magic of beginnings. Now, I'm going to add on to Meister Eckhart here that something new and trust the magic of beginnings means that we've acknowledged the ending of something else, which is important because as we're mourning whatever has left us, something new is already magically arising, magically occurring. Hybrid Jim says he thanks the ground too, and I do as I walk every morning, and I thank the air. I try to extend my walk as thankfulness itself. Destiny Forever Walks PhD is here. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday to you as well, my friend. And Hybrid Jim says, I think the trees do appreciate quiet flowing efforts. So I like to think. I agree. And here's the thing. If you think it in that context, it's so. It's an extension of the atmosphere itself. It's not a selfish thought. It's not that I, me, mine, ego thought, as I know one of Hybrid Jim's favorite bands of all times, the Beatles, quoting George Harrison, I, me, mine, a song entirely about grasping at the ego things of the world. The magic of beginnings. But again, that means we have to trust the magic of endings as it seamlessly moves in to that brand new beginning. I'm mainly sticking. I thought really I'd be going over to some of the, particularly the Middle Eastern mystics, but man, I can't get off of Meister Eckhart right now, and I could just do a complete talk of nothing but Meister Eckhart. Only the hand that erases can write the true thing. And that refers quite a bit back to what I was saying about the magic of endings. If you remember the quote that I had read from Rumi, I'm going to say it one more time because that's important. I, you, he, she, we. In the garden of mystic lovers, these are not true distinctions. And what I was saying before was it's a universal language. It's one language that the mystics speak. When we say thank you to the trees, when we say thank you to the earth, it's a universal language. Doesn't matter what language we say it in. It's the language of love, of gratefulness. So when Meister Eckhart says, only the hand that erases can write the true thing, we're making a distinction between true and false. We're not so much speaking that language of the mystics. The problem is we have to use language, but it's just a description. It's not the true thing. And that's why Meister Eckhart says the hand that erases, because that gives us the pure experience of what is emptiness. Everything occurs with an emptiness. Without knowing emptiness, we never know the fullness of this. Going back right to the quote, right to what I was saying before about the true language, is a quote that just came up. Theologians may quarrel, but the mystics of the world speak the same language. It's from Meister Eckhart. And this will be the last one from Meister Eckhart. Wisdom consists in doing the next thing you have to do, doing it with your whole heart, and finding delight in doing it. I think, being that we are a fitness community, we can all take some of that wisdom to the joy of what we do. That wisdom consists in doing the next thing you have to do, doing it with your whole heart, and finding delight in doing it. That's why we find joy in the suffering of one more rep. That's why we find joy in dancing on a treadmill, skipping rope. That's why we find joy in doing muscle ups under a tree. Because it's the next thing we have to do, for whatever reason. Who knows why? It's just the very next thing we have to do. So, of course, I say of course, but one of my favorite mystics, St. John of the Cross. Dark night of the soul. We've all been there. If we have not been there, I'm sad to say, it will occur. It just happens. It's part of life. And here it is from St. John of the Cross. The endurance of darkness is the preparation for great light. And that's why we all must endure the dark night of the soul. Because the soul has been buried by everyday activities. Today, I'm going to quote George Harrison again, I, me, mine, that the light, the great light that St. John of the Cross is talking about, has been buried by the I, me, mine, by the grasping ego. Give me more of this and less of that. More pleasure, less pain. So we don't know that great light. It's been buried. And yet we're going to suffer by not knowing it. And that suffering is the darkness that we have to endure for the light to come. I was blessed with my own dark night, several, and have come out shining with new realization, shining with a really a wordless, it was almost ready to say conviction, but conviction means I have this deep, deep belief. It's beyond beliefs. I talked about beliefs in my blog yesterday, how we generally teach our kids our own beliefs without questioning whether they're right or wrong. And so the cycle continues. We think things are this way, so we teach them to our kids. However, a belief is never the thing. It's just a description of reality, as they say in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. That's as close as I'm going to get to saying it correctly, so don't ask me to say it again. The menu is not the meal. The map is not the territory. The description of anything is not reality. So I don't have a conviction of my great light. I had lightness. just there. So just because you go through a dark night of the soul does not necessarily mean, unfortunately, that it's over. However, the experience of light afterwards, of your own light, and knowing that that light is the light of existence itself, is the original light of the Big Bang, of creation, makes it worthwhile. I would go through 10,000 dark nights of the soul for the recognition of that light. Let's go. One more. A close associate of St. John of the Cross, Teresa. We'll do one quote, and I'll start wrapping things up. St. Teresa was famous for her description of the interior castle, which is the internal reality that we discover as you practice meditation or mysticism or contemplative prayer or spending time in nature, doing Tai Chi, doing Qigong, all of that. You enter the interior castle and you know that it has been built through love. It has been built by love. Its very essence is love. It is the abode of Atman, the soul, God within. And St. Teresa says about the interior castle and how we get there through prayer, that prayer is nothing else than being on terms of friendship with God. And it's good to, whatever your concept of God is, to begin to think of in terms of friendship, which is the same thing, talking with Hybrid Jim, when we think of friendship with the tree, friendship with the earth, when we think that the tree has extended its branch just to do muscle ups. And we could write that off. It's our imagination, whatever. It's a better place when we know that. And that's what it comes down to, is at a certain point, it's not imagination, it's an experience. We know it through silence, not by words, not by description. So, that is pretty much all of it for today. This is my first book. I talked about it yesterday. I read a little bit from it yesterday on my short, Does God Have a Hero? I had put this book aside for decades. It was published in 2000. I wrote it in 98. I wrote it really after a decade of drinking and coming out of that stupor, a little lost, my own dark night of the soul. What should I do with my life? And as I said, the reason why this book came back in light for me was thinking about mysticism, Christian mystics in particular, and this was very much inspired by my close association with reading Christian mysticism. So if anyone is interested, I'll read more probably on my shorts. I'm not going to read more today as we're going to wrap things up because we're a little past the 30-minute mark. And unfortunately, I got some more phone calls to make in terms of switching accounts over to my name, my father's house. Never easy thing to do. It's complicated sometimes, but also it's always going to be my dad's house. Making that switch, even though I'll be living here, it'll always be my dad's house. So, all right, guys, I'm going to say goodbye. I will see you tomorrow. Probably continue talking about the mystics. It's just a topic that is unending in its fascination for me. And we'll go a little broader. We'll talk about some of the Zen mystics, my favorite being Basho, and others as well. And maybe some of the great Taoist mystics, of which there are quite a few. So if anyone has any quotes or any favorite mystics themselves that they want to talk about, bring along a quote and we'll talk about it. Or join me live if you want, and we'll have a conversation together. With that, I'm going to say goodbye. Thanks for joining me, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one.